Hey everyone, welcome back to Podcast Launch Diaries Week 7. We are 4 weeks away from launch. If you are paying attention at home, you will remember that last week was also 4 weeks to launch, which means that I have pushed the launch date back 1 week. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what went into that decision. And I also want to give you a sneak peek at one of the podcast episodes that I've started post-production on, and I'm super excited to share that with you. So all that plus a whole bunch more coming in this episode. All right, so to kick off this episode, like we always do, let's take a look at how I've been spending the time over the past week and how much time I've been spending. So if we jump over here into Toggle, we can see 11 and a half hours on the podcast, so that's a fair amount. And this was a much more productive week than some of the past few have been. And so a large chunk here, this one was almost 3 hours on editing. And so I mentioned that I do want to give you a sneak peek into that episode that I've been working on. This is the first episode that I have started post-production on. So 4 weeks out, I'm excited to kind of be ahead of that. I was a little bit worried that I might procrastinate and it might be a couple weeks before and still have not started the post-production. But this one I am super excited to be editing. I don't do much editing myself anymore, as I have the team at Counterweight who is doing most of that. Occasionally I do, but it was actually really nice to be back in the editor's chair and feeling a kind of sense of mastery and craft when working on my own podcast for the first time in a while, which is really cool. And it's not always as exciting when you're doing the work for someone else, even if it's something that you do love. And oftentimes, when you're doing it for yourself, it just feels so much more rewarding. So that was really a great feeling yesterday as I was working on that and really crafting this episode and making a lot more kind of content editing decisions than I normally would for a client, which is where a lot of the fun came in. All right, so other than that, we had the time spread across a bunch of tasks here, guest follow-up. I did another interview this week and some interview prep for that, and another episode that actually got pushed back until September that I was already starting to prepare for. So, and then we got some podcast launch diary stuff that is not directly tied to the podcast, but is tied to the promotion and the launch of it. My hope is that this series kind of builds some interest and feeds into that. So that's why I'm tracking my time on that, as I mentioned before. So 11 and a half hours overall compared to the previous week. That's a bit more. I think all of last week, like we mentioned in the previous episode, episode 6, was mainly interviews and interview prep. And I didn't get to do much behind the scenes type stuff, building out the podcast or the launch or the systems and strategy and all that kind of stuff. I got a lot more of that done this week, which I don't actually know where it is on the timesheet here. I think I grouped it into something else here as well. Anyway, let's jump over to one of the things that I am really excited to have got started on this week was, or maybe not got started, but furthered and advanced, was getting all the episodes scheduled out. So if we jump over to my Airtable sheet where I track everything, obviously this looks like a lot of information right off the bat here, but basically I've started slotting in where all these episodes are going to go. And I've had some guests already reaching out and asking, when is their episode going to go live so they can prepare to promote it. Fit that into their calendar. And so I know I've mentioned or shown you some of this spreadsheet before, but I want to go into a little bit more depth now that there's actually some data here. So obviously here we have the published dates. So like I mentioned, and like I'll get to at the end, I did push back the launch date to September 1st. Initially it was going to be August 25th. August 25th is now going to be when this teaser episode goes out. And so that's just going to be, that'll be when I submit it to Apple Podcasts, and it can take, I've seen it be as fast as a few hours for it to be approved and as long as maybe 5 or 6 days in some cases. So I want to give myself lots of time there to make sure everything's good to go on launch day. And then I've started scheduling in these episodes. So you can see I've got a number of solo episodes here. I'm going to be doing 2 episodes a week off the bat. Initially, I was going to be doing just 1 a week, but then I realized I had so many guest episodes and I have so many more guests lined up to come on that I'm just going to have so much content, I might as well do 2 a week. And I think the solo episodes are going to be pretty easy because these are all topics that I'm very familiar with. I've written blog posts on them before, so this is going to be kind of a different version of the content that applies to this audience. So those I think will be fairly straightforward. I write a blog post every day, so I have written already this year, I don't know, hundreds of blog posts. So there's a lot of content that I can fall back on there. And if you want to check any of that out, all the podcasting related stuff is on our website at counterweightcreative.co/blog, or you can find me on Medium, and I'll have a link in the description beneath this video for other content. All that, the same content on podcasting is on there, and as well, I also have some other stuff around creativity and mindset and productivity and all that kind of stuff there as well. So then I've got my guests scheduled in here. So we've got the first guest, Abel James, which was just an unbelievable interview, and I'm going to share a little bit about that coming up, some quotes from the episode. Really great episode. Then we've got, as you can see, some other guests scheduled here. So the guest interviews or episodes are going to be on every Tuesday. I think I have them scheduled. And then I have my solo episodes. These 3 are all going live on launch day, so those are all going to be on Tuesday. But then my solo episodes will be on Thursdays. And I've scheduled those out. The guest episodes are scheduled out right now through the end of the year. And there are some gaps here. I don't know if I'm going to continue doing the 2 episodes a week forever, indefinitely, or if I'm going to switch to 1 a week. And so I've left some gaps here. Either I still want to alternate between guest and solo episodes. So if I stick with just 1 a week or go to 1 a week episodes, then these will be solo episodes. Or if I stick with 2 a week, then I'm going to add in more guest episodes here and more solo episodes as well. So that's how that is all coming together there. And that feels really good to start slotting in everything here. And if we look over here, one of the things I have in my content calendar is the opt-in as well as the product tie-in. So I'm going to be relaunching Podcast Marketing Academy. We're wrapping up the first cohort here in August at the end of the month. And then the second one is going to launch in end of September, early October, sometime around there. So as I'm thinking about how the content I'm putting out on the podcast is leading into that helped kind of inform some of the decisions on which episodes are going to be slotted where. And so as I'm leading into that launch around October 1st, then I want the episodes, maybe the 4 or 5 episodes before that, to be very like podcast focused, content focused, content marketing, all that kind of stuff, because that's what the course is about. And so we'll touch on those topics on the podcast. And for any podcasters in the audience, they will hopefully see like, hey, this is something that would benefit me. I've learned a little bit from these past few episodes, but I want to go deep. And so then those will all be kind of leading into that Podcast Marketing Academy there. And then I've got some opt-ins here as well that are outlined here that I'll be funneling people towards through the episodes. And here we've just got the status update on where everything's at, rough edit, recording completed, and so on. Let's see, the web links will go here. The show format, just, teaser episode, solo guests. I have a couple different types of guests. So I've got actual wellness business owners and subject matter experts who are not, they don't own a wellness business themselves, but they serve wellness business owners. So that 2 different types of guests there. I have the content buckets here. And so my content buckets are, this link's somewhere else, over here. So we've got mindset and lifestyle, marketing and growth, product, services, and monetization, business operations, systems and tech, and for brick and mortar businesses there. So those are the different content buckets, and those all tie back into this. And so I want to kind of have those scattered across there. You can see at the start a very heavy focus on marketing and growth, but that is because I will be promoting Podcast Marketing Academy. And so I do want to be very marketing focused in those episodes to kind of pique people's curiosity, give them some wins, hopefully, and help show them that, I might be a good fit, and the Podcast Marketing Academy might be a good fit to help them market their podcasts better and build their audiences and increase their revenue. Then I've also got a listener milestone. So I always like to do this, and this is something we actually talk about quite a bit in Podcast Marketing Academy, but this is just basically the different stages that a listener goes through as in my target audience. And so I want to make sure that I'm addressing each of these stages. These are kind of milestones that, as you're starting a wellness business, you're going to need to do each of these things. And so I want to have episodes addressing each of those. And so that is basically how I've mapped it out here. And it feels, like I said, really great to actually have some peace of mind around like, okay, I know when these things are going live. I can start planning for them. I mapped out my solo episodes. I know that was one of my goals for last week, which I did. And also it feels like a weight's kind of been lifted off my shoulders in terms of, well, first I have this podcast launch, but then I have the Podcast Marketing Academy launch. And so understanding that this content is going to feed very naturally into Podcast Marketing Academy just feels a lot better. I feel I had a little confusion about that, about how I was going to spread the word and how I was going to structure the podcast in order to funnel people to that. And having this all in place and scheduled out feels great, as does having episodes scheduled pretty much through the end of the year, which is amazing. So I'm a huge fan of planning in advance. I don't always do it super well, but having done this now this week, I feel a lot clearer and just like a lot less clutter in my brain. Everything just feels like, okay, I can do this. Like it's all mapped out. I can just create these solo episodes. I know where these episodes are going. I know which order I need to edit them and all that kind of stuff. So having this planned out feels amazing. All right, so if we jump into my goals from last week, let's have a look here. So mapping out the lead magnet, I did that. And so basically this is going to be a video series, I think, that I'm gonna do it as. I'll probably do a PDF and a video series version, but it's gonna be the 7 key elements that every wellness business needs in order to thrive. And these are gonna be very business specific things. And so that is going to be the lead magnet. And I feel really excited about that. It feels like something that's gonna be really valuable. And I think especially as a video series, it'll almost be like a mini course. I'm assuming it'll be 30 to 45 minutes long. A number of videos, and I'm really hopeful that that is going to be a really high converting lead magnet, because it sounds valuable to me, and I know the content that's going to be in it is going to be really valuable, so I'm hoping that other people see that as well, and I think they will. So that feels good to have that settled. I've continued with the social media outreach and networking. The launch plan, like I kind of talked about with scheduling out all the episodes, I mean, that's more for Podcast Marketing Academy, but it also feels good to have the launch plan scheduled out, or the launch order of episodes. And so for the launch plan for the podcast, I've also had some ideas that have kind of solidified over the past week. And so there are going to be some exciting things, including some free content and potentially a challenge or something like that as well. That will be both some stuff for podcasters as well for wellness business owners. And so I'm really excited to share more about that as we get closer, but I'm going to keep the lid on that for now. And then I've also done some guesting outreach. I have a couple of guest appearances lined up to do the interviews. I haven't done the interviews yet, but those are booked. And so those will be coming out over the next couple months to help promote both the podcast as well as Podcast Marketing Academy. Music. I'm still waiting to hear back from the composer, the musician who is doing the music for me. I have, I think I am going to use a bunch of music, and so I'm going to use Artlist, which I mentioned before in an earlier episode, to get a bunch of the stock music, and then the theme music will be this custom produced music, which I'm waiting on. And I think last week I said I am a big fan of the kind of idea that we have going, and I'm just waiting on some tweaks from the musician there who's creating that. So I hoped I would have an update for you by this week, but it looks like maybe that will have to wait until next week. Fingers crossed. Follow up with potential collaborators. I did a little bit of this, but not as much as I would have liked. Might do some of that today. And then creating SOPs for episode production. This is just going to be an ongoing thing as I continue to edit and do the post-production on the episodes, and then get into repurposing content. So that's going to be more and more that's going to come over the coming weeks. All right, so I said that I was going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at the behind the scenes, the episode that I've started production on. So this is the episode here. I've, as you can see, made quite a number of edits. Abel was a really great speaker, but part of the reasoning for me, you know, if this was for a client, I probably wouldn't have done this many edits and let it sound more natural, which a lot of our clients want. But for me, I want this to be super tight. And because we are a podcast production and marketing agency, I want it to be really highlight what we're able to do. And so this is going to be a pretty highly produced podcast. And so I did do more editing. Abel is a fantastic speaker and didn't have a lot of ums and ahs and all that kind of stuff. But I just tightened it up a lot and probably took out almost 20 minutes of content. I think it was around an hour episode before I started editing. And as you can see now, it's less than 40 minutes. So took out quite a bit. And a lot of that stuff is actually going to be used in promotion. It's not actually going to show up in the episode, but I'm going to use it in outside promotion, kind of behind the scenes stuff, or not bloopers, but additional bonus content, kind of in a way that is not in the podcast, but is on social or wherever. So some of that stuff that, like, I loved the content, but didn't really feel like it was really tight for the episode, that's going to just appear elsewhere because it's still great content. So as you can see, I've muted some parts here, and actually it'll be a little easier to see if I switch up the playlist here. And so we've got these kind of chunks, and these grayed out parts, these are muted. These are going to be interstitials where I am going to record a voiceover in a more narrative style kind of sense. And so a lot of these places here, I cut out bits of content around it, and so that's going to kind of bridge the conversation from where it was to where it's going to go. Or I might, I'm going to offer some of my own insight on that point that I didn't get into in the episode. And so those are going to be little breaks, like if you were listening to an NPR style show or anything like that, where there are those breaks in the conversation. So that's what's going to go in there. Next week, I am going to record those, as well as put in some of the music placements that will be behind them as well. So that is exciting that this is coming together. I just had so much fun editing this episode. I was super excited before recording it. After I recorded it, I was really excited. Now after editing it, I'm like getting really, really excited. So I really can't wait for people to hear this one. So let's just jump through a couple clips here because this was just such a great episode, and Abel had so much great stuff to say.
Bad things work better online. That's one of the reasons the entire internet is a tabloid trash now. All of it. Doesn't matter where you go. It's just trash. Because people don't click on artfully produced pictures of kale and a cornucopia of veggies. They'll click on the picture of me with my shirt off, or someone else in like a suggestive pose, in the same way that like sexy women sell cars and stuff. And so there's this flashbang thing that works online. And a lot of times for marketers, like my background is studying brain science. I almost went into psychiatry, and a lot of marketing is meant to poke holes in someone, make them feel worse about themselves. We've turned down millions before we ever made anything close to that. And you have to turn down way more. And you have to say no to way more, even if it is working. When you allow a little bit more of yourself to be seen, and when you put that out there, the other people who are more like you are attracted to that. And maybe like all of the people who were totally into going into the gym and stuff like that were into listening to a few of my episodes at the beginning, but like, that's not really my people. I'll also say this, that there's a big delay between the time that we do the work and the time that it pays off. And so like if you're slacking in your business, or if you're focusing on the wrong projects, or you're not focusing on where your money's coming from for a little while, then 3, 6 months, 12 months later, you're like, where did all my sales go? How come this isn't working anymore? And it's because of not what you're doing right then, totally busting your ass again, getting everything back in order. It's because of what happened those months before. I think we're all here to work on our soul and learn something. So if what you're doing is making the world worse, just notice that. I've noticed that a couple times in my life. When I was paying off my loans after college, I took jobs in consulting, working with Fortune 500s and working with the federal government. And I'm like, even working with the Federal Department of Education, I did keynote speeches for them and all of that, worked pretty closely on some of their projects. And I'm like, oh, what if this isn't helping?
All right, so I'm super excited for this episode and a lot of the other ones coming up. This was a super deep dive into a lot of really sticky issues around the ethics in marketing and what works online and whether we should do that. Is that too scammy? And are we taking advantage of people or making people feel worse about themselves? Which obviously part of the goal of the show, Build a Better Wellness Business, is about doing better and about marketing ethically and responsibly and running our businesses in a way that makes the world a better place for us and our teams and our clients and customers, but also our communities and the world as a whole. So that's something that I've been getting into a lot on these episodes, and I'm really excited to share with people because, you know, one of my driving core beliefs is really that we as business owners and content creators and producers, we have so much more ability and influence to shift the way that businesses operate and our communities operate, and we have a lot of control over that. And so we need to be role models and examples in making things better and raising the bar for everyone else around us. So that's one of the things that I'm most excited about to get into and promote with this podcast. And so I hope that you are along for the ride with that. Whether or not you are a wellness business owner, or if you're just a content creator, a podcaster who's watching this for the podcast side of things, I hope that that's something that you think about as well, about how can you use your platform to make the world better outside of just the stuff that you talk about on your show. All right, so lastly, I mentioned that I pushed the launch date back by a week. Originally it was going to be end of August, now it's going to be the 1st of September. And the reason behind that is I was starting to feel a lot of pressure around the launch being really successful because I, do podcast production and marketing and strategy and all those types of things. I was starting to feel this pressure of like, oh man, like this needs to do well, or else, it might undermine all my credibility. And that was starting to build up over the previous 2-3 weeks as we were getting closer to the launch date. And this week I kind of had to stop and think like, okay, wait a minute. What's the real reason I started this podcast? Is that something that I have the expectation that this show is going to be massive right off the start or anything like that? And when I thought about that more, I thought, no, it actually isn't. And a lot of that pressure was coming from people outside of myself. And when I was thinking about like, well, what would they think if this show doesn't do really well right off the bat? And the more I thought about it was, well, my whole reason for starting the show was as an excuse, basically a networking tool, to be able to meet cool people and interview them. And potentially down the line, if it's a good fit, that they might become clients and customers, or maybe I'll become clients or customers of theirs. Like, I just wanted to meet cool people and expand my network and level that up. And that was the whole goal. Any audience whatsoever was just a cherry on top. And so for me, coming back to that and realizing that this week, like, oh, okay, I don't need to put so much pressure on myself. It doesn't matter if the show is, has a slow start and grows over time. That's not why I'm doing it. I would love to build an audience, and I want to help people and reach people and help them run better wellness businesses. But really for me, the biggest benefit is just going to be meeting cool people who are doing cool things and developing a relationship with them. So that is coming back to that reason of like why I'm actually doing it, the pressure has melted off, and I'm feeling so much more excited and confident about the launch, which probably is going to actually, make it a better launch in the first place. So I think that that's just such an important thing to remember. Like, why are you doing this? Why did you start your show? Why did you start your business? Why did you start whatever your content is that you're putting out there? And if it's a reason that isn't, something that you actually believe in, maybe it's time to stop doing that, or reconsider how you're going about it, and coming up with a way that actually feels aligned with what you want to do and is something that you're excited about. So that's my encouragement to you. That's been really helpful for me this week. And part of like the case study of growing a podcast that I've wanted to put out is so often people have such high expectations around their podcast launch, and if they don't have a great launch, it's just not going to be that great in the future, which is just not my belief at all. And so part of me really wants to start small and grow over time to show people that, hey, even if you know everything about podcast launching, not that I know everything, but like even if you live and breathe that world and you do podcast launches for clients and all these things, like it's going to take time. Like it's going to start small and it's going to grow over time. So part of me is actually really excited to show that side of things and be like, hey, no matter how much you know, unless you're bringing an existing massive audience to your show, it's not going to catch, it's not just going to take off right off the bat. That it's something that you need to be consistent with and show up with every week or whatever your published schedule is over time for months and years even before you're going to really start that snowball rolling and are going to see massive results. Something that I've said before, I don't know if I've said it on these podcast launch diaries, definitely on my blog, is that podcasting for 1 year might not feel like it's worth it. It might feel like a waste of time, but podcasting for 3 years might change your life entirely. And it is something that there's just this compounding effect that the more you put in, it takes a long time to get rolling and build up that momentum. But then once it's rolling, it's really hard to stop. So that's something that I would just suggest you keep in mind and think about, when you're in that slog, if you're in that first, 6 months or a year or even between 1 and 2 years, like that's where a lot of people give up. And that's before a lot of people see the results. Like if they kept going past that point, you're actually going to really start seeing results. And so keep going. That's not to say that you should never quit. If you have zero audience or you've got 5 people listening, I think it's time to maybe revisit how you're marketing it, or consider that maybe not every single niche has an audience, or not every single topic in the way that you're presenting it. So if you're struggling, experiment, try different things, and if nothing is really working, maybe it is time to move on to something else. But a lot of times if you're getting good feedback from people who listen to the show, even if it's not a ton, if you have a few hundred listeners or something like that, and you do get a little bit of feedback here and there from people who say they love the show, you're probably onto something, and you probably need to stick with it. And you probably still need to experiment and play around with different ways of marketing and different ways of promoting it, different ways of creating the content. But it sounds like that in that case there might be something there and it's worth sticking with. But so that's just something I would suggest as encouragement to you as well. All right, so let's jump over and look at some of the goals for next week. There are a lot of them here, and I've actually divided them up into kind of this top section here of these 5, which are the kind of must-dos, and then these which would be nice to do. And so creating the lead magnet slide, since it's going to be a video, there's going to be slides going along with the video. And so those, I want to create those, map those out next week. Hopefully, again, finalize the music. That's been, I think, 3 weeks in a row now that's been a goal, but hopefully I can get that back from the musician, the composer, and that will be finished off. I would like to finish that first episode edit with all the interstitials and the music as well. I'm really excited to do that. And then script and record the teaser episode, because that's going to be uploaded in 3 weeks from now, I think, will be when I upload it. And then also send guest postcards. This is something that I do for all of my guests, is send out a postcard from wherever I am. It's kind of cool because I do travel. So I already sent out a first batch from Scotland when I was there. Now that I'm in Lisbon, I'll send out some more for the guests that I am recording with while I am here. And so that's something that I just liked. One of my goals with the show is to really value the guest experience. That is one of the things I am care most about with this show, is making sure the guests have a great experience and show that I'm really on top of the production and care about how they come across, and I really want to help promote them to the best ability that I can. And then we've got a bunch of other kind of looser goals here. So map out 4 narrative episode topics. These will be NPR style episodes with multiple people being interviewed. And so I want to map out those topics. I'm thinking I'll do maybe 1 per quarter of those because they take so much work. When I've worked on those types of episodes in the past, it can take anywhere from like 20 to 60 hours to produce one. So they can take a lot of time depending on how much sound design you're doing, music sourcing, all those types of things, interviewing different people. But I do want to use those as a kind of showcase for Counterweight Creative and what we can do. Follow up with potential collaborators. That's just an ongoing thing. More guesting outreach, creating the SOPs as I go when I'm doing the post-production and all that kind of thing. Schedule the launch promotion, and more social media outreach and networking, which is again just an ongoing thing. So that is it for this episode. Lots to talk about this episode, and I hope you enjoyed the behind the scenes look at the first episode, or one of the initial episodes, the first interview that's going to be released with Abel. Go check him out. His brand is Fat Burning Man, and his whole diet that he had come up with is around basically eating cheeseburgers and cookies as a way to lose weight. And as he shares, it is possible. What do you know? He had the #1 health podcast on iTunes for 5 years, TV show, all these things. Super successful guy. Like you heard in the one clip, he also studied brain science, or almost studied brain science. I can't remember now, but he just unbelievably smart guy, knows a ton of stuff, and is a deep thinker as well, which I think really, was apparent in that conversation that we had. So I hope you enjoyed those clips, and I can't wait for you to listen to the full episode. And until next week, let me know where you're at with your launch. Let me know if you're enjoying these videos. If there's anything that you would like to see, put it down in the comments, and I will be sure to address it in an upcoming episode. All right, until next week, take it easy. I'll see you then. Bye.